Hey, y'all. Welcome to the Up with Mutt show. I got a guest in the show. It's my alpha son, my only son. I call my children my alpha and my omega because I only got two, the beginning and the end. So, welcome to the Up with Mutt show. Yes. I'm excited. So, y'all know how we do. Don't forget to shake the show. Remember, when you shake it, all righty, share and like it, shake it. Uh, Jump in with me and comment on today. Yes. I am celebrating my son. I told y'all that this month I am celebrating men, and I know on the calendar is Men Day. So y'all know how we start with prayer. Father God, I just thank you, give you all the praise, give you all the glory. You are worthy and so great. You do miracles so great. There is none like you. And Father, I just thank you for using the Upward Mutt show to take me from my W-2 to my 1099, Lord God. And I just thank you for my son, and thank you for being here, for having him here with me. You know, we've been on for 2 years, and he wanted to grace us today. And I just thank him. And I thank you for what you're doing in his life, Lord God. I thank you that everywhere his feet trod and everything his hands touch are blessed, Lord God. And I give you all the praise and the glory. Thank you for my viewers. Thank you for my shikers. Thank you, Father. You know, just continue to show up in their lives, Lord God. Thank you for the praise reports and the testimonies that are coming forth just because somebody watched the Upward Mutt show. And I do, Father. I just give you all the praise and the glory. In the mighty name of Jesus, I believe and I receive by faith what I've prayed. Amen. Amen. So we're going to start off today, son. And he is here, and I tell you, he does a lot behind the scenes. He be like, Mom, this is what you can do. I mean, when I was struggling with some things, he would, just help me out. And so, John, tell me, since we're celebrating me, I want to tell you first, you're such a good son. You know, we've not always agreed, and any parent that always agree with their children, I want to see it. But we have not always agreed. We have had our ups and downs. We're going to get into that later. But we're going to talk about fatherhood because he has a rambunctious, very smart, very intelligent 4-year-old. When you talk to him, you think you're probably talking to a 6 or 7-year-old. He is his father made over. He will debate you. He would try to con you out of stuff, I'm not gonna say con, but he'll try to give you another way to look at it. So, son, tell me, what is fatherhood like for you?
Whew, fatherhood. I would have to say fatherhood is probably the biggest look in the mirror that you'll probably ever have. It definitely causes you to self-examine, um, and kind of look at yourself first. But it is definitely a joy. Um, just those moments when you see they finally start to understand things or things start to click. It's definitely it's definitely enjoyable, even though those times may be a little bit far in between. But
Yes. Okay, so I'm gonna tell you, when my son first told me he was gonna be a father, I was like, yeah, really, son? I mean, I was like, oh man, But then as time got closer and we went to the old baby to do the reveal and the baby shower, and it was just like, in my mind, I was thinking, I'm too young to be a grandmother. I was just, let's see, he's 4. So I was 52 years old. I was just thinking, man, I am way too young to be a grandmother. But I just want to celebrate my son because he is an awesome father. And I just want to, shout out the young men out there who are awesome fathers and who are putting in the work, regardless of what the relationship is like, with the mother or whatever. It's just, you still have to put in the work. You still have to be a father. And to the mothers out there who, may try to make it hard, don't do that. And but she's not. His mother, his son's mother is not doing that. And I just thank God for that. But what? And y'all know we've been talking about family hurt, church hurt, things like that. And my son, I'm gonna tell y'all something about my son. This is how I know he's strong and resilient, because when I first had him, I was 23. I was still kicking it. I found out I was pregnant. I was like, no, I can't have a baby. I'm just in my prime, 23, just out there living my best life. So I thought. And so when the nurse came out and she was like, oh, we're going to have a baby, I just bust into tears because I was like, how am I going to tell my mother? But most of all, how am I going to tell my grandmother? Because my grandmother had already given my cousins down the road for having children out of wedlock. And so I was just like, okay, so this particular day, I was going to tell her, I'm going to tell you, my great grandmother already knew. Because she was like, whoo, child, you with a child. Well, she didn't say ooh child. She had a favorite word, 4 letters start with S, N, and T. But she would say, she said, ooh, start with S, N, and T. Your behind is getting big. You are with a child. I was like, I ain't with no child. And because I was still, taking my BCs, I was still, out there, living my best life, working, just kicking it. We opened up the era from Thursday to Sunday, or if we were going anywhere else, pizzazz, whatever. I was living, I was clubbing, I was doing everything. Had my Daisy Duke shorts, you know what I'm saying? Because I was like a size 16, 18 then. And I'm gonna tell you, my son came out 5 pounds, 3 ounces. I didn't gain much weight with my son at all. It was just like my behind was bigger than what it is now. And so up pops this little bouncy boy. Well, in my mind, sometimes there were days I just felt like, oh, I got this baby. But I tell you what, he caught a lot of my anger because as a single parent, I was just trying to make it happen. And I know I wasn't the easiest mom to get along with. I had people to tell me, you whipped him all the time. I was like, but look at him now, but the way I discipline, I just feel like now you should not hit children when you're angry. You should not, look at your children and be mad at the other parent or whatever. But I was just like, oh, he cried all the time. He was just like a crier. And I was like, will you stop crying just for nothing? But I tell you, we worked through that. We got better and better until about 15. And like old folks say, they start smelling themselves. And but if you could take away, what are the 5 parenting things you wouldn't do that I did? And what are the 5 things you would do that I did as a parent? Be honest, you transparent.
Honestly, I mean, 5 things.
Well, I mean, if you can't think of 5, okay.
I can't. I mean, I think like when it comes to parenthood, it's honestly just a journey of really learning yourself. So I mean, you could say things that you wish you wouldn't do, but there'll come a time where it's like you'll do it. Like there's times where I told myself, I'd never yell at my son, but I mean, it's life. Sometimes things are piling up, and it's like you just don't know any other way to get it off. So I mean, it's not even it's not even. I can't even think because I mean, it's not. Nothing was ever intentional. I guess is the way to say it. Nothing was ever. I ever felt like it was you stepping outside of a line. I mean, I felt like you were always my biggest supporter for sure, but us being so close, I mean, I think it was natural to kind of catch the day-to-day of what you have going on. I mean, so honestly, like I knew it wasn't easy, but I don't think I'd change anything.
Oh, so. Wow. I tell you, because I probably wasn't the easiest to approach though as you got older.
Oh no, I mean you definitely you definitely have to figure out how to say what you need to say nicely.
Yeah.
And in a way to where it don't come off as smart or me trying to be, a smart aleck or whatever. Even though I may be right. But it's right. It's just you. I mean, as time grew, I mean, we figured it out. I mean, you became my best friend. We talk on the phone all the time. So I mean, it what happened needed to happen,
And I thank God because I see him, and sometimes I just look up. I say, God, I thank you because he's such a good dad. That's what my grandson calls him, dad. And even after he disciplined him, he still wants to be with his dad. And that's what I tell people about discipline. You know, if timeout works for you, that's fine. But the Bible says, do not, you know, you spare the rod, you spoil the child. And I just believe sometimes tapping needs to happen. I remember one time my son, he drew back at me at 2 years old. 2 years old. I mean, he put his fist up and he drew back at me. And when I came through too, I just saw my son flying through the air. You know, just like, what happened? But I mean, it was that moment that when I saw him draw back, I was like, because, you know, some people think it's cute, but you don't want to raise a son who's abusive. And so I just thank God that we worked through our tough times. I mean, we had some tough times that, you know, it was gonna be my way. You know, it wasn't no other choice. We are gonna do it this way. But he knew, and he still knows, I am his biggest cheerleader. Because I know when I played sports, my parents didn't come to a lot of my games. And I said one thing about my children: when they play sports or do anything, they're going to see their mother in the crowd. And you know, there were times I got put out at the basketball game,
running down the sideline. Yeah.
I mean, I thank God that I can celebrate with my son. You know, I have met guys who don't care for their mothers. And my son knows, you know, I might not like everything he does, but he knows that I got his back. And so as we celebrate, you know, this month as a man, what has been challenging as far as fatherhood? What are some of your challenges?
I think it's balancing the time to continue to work on self at the same time of, you know, having to be a role model.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's one thing that gets lost, because it is very easy as a man to just focus on responsibility, focus on everything that needs to go, that needs to happen, the things that you're responsible for,
Mm-hmm.
but also still being responsible for your own personal growth, your mental health.
Yes.
It's one of those things. It's easy for it to get lost in priorities. It's easy to put that off to the side and realize, like, oh, it's been 2 years since I've come back and actually checked on myself or checked on where my mind is at during this process. Because I mean, I understand that mothers go through so much of a change when kids are born, but I don't think people really take into account the other side for men, because gaining all that responsibility, gaining all of the things that come with wanting to be a good father, wanting to be a good provider, I don't know if it really gets targeted as much, because it's just as much of an overnight shift as it is for women as it is for men.
Yes.
And I think just being understanding in the process of just communicating with one another, just like, hey, you know, just as much as we check in on the mother, hey man, how are you doing? I always try to make sure that when I talk to new fathers, I'm like, hey, what are you doing for you? What are you doing to keep your mental health intact? What are you doing to work on growing as a person, for you, and not just for your family, not just for the people who need you, but like, are you still able to find what you're passionate about, how to pursue your passions? Just staying in tune, honestly, is the biggest thing.
Because you can lose yourself in parenthood.
You can.
And I thank God that I don't understand how people can walk away. You know, how can you walk away from one of the greatest blessings on earth is a child? Is a child, because you have some fathers out there. Now, don't get me wrong, I know there are women who are making it difficult. Every time you get $1, they want a dime. If you're not there at 6 o'clock, you know, they calling the courts. It's just the biggest mess. I just hate because a man in a robe has to get involved in your personal affairs. So when you see, how do you encourage men, or even if you've encountered men who are not active in their children's lives?
Honestly, I think you can go to the mindset of, we as men, we're very competitive. We have that edge to us to where we want to be great at things, and sometimes realizing that you're not great at something off bat can be a deterrent. I think a lot of men, when it comes into fatherhood, starting off, you may not have been the best example. You may not have everything intact. You may not have the situation that you want. And it's easy to look at yourself and say, you know what, I don't want to be a failure and just walk off. But I think having to understand that anything that you'll ever be great at, you won't be good at first. You have to work yourself through it, and be gracious and forgiving with yourself, which is something I've definitely had to do personally. Just like, you know, what can I understand from this process? Like, I didn't, as much as I wanted to be perfect, expecting to be perfect,
because you were raised like that. I mean, I did. I didn't give my children room to have errors. It was like, why come you can't say your ABCs? Why come you can't count to 10? I could never homeschool them. But anyway, go back. I'm sorry. But they were. It's like they had no room for error. And parents, if you are doing that, please stop. Please don't make your children feel like they have to be perfect. I just didn't think my children should make mistakes. Did they make them? Yes, but I don't think they should have. What could you have done different to not make that mistake? Go ahead. Yeah. I'm sorry.
But and I think that's the part is like men have very little leeway when it comes to, in our personal minds, when it comes to certain situations. Like that thought of not being good at something because we want to excel, we want to have power over so many different situations. We want to show that we can step into our own. When you have a situation where you can't, or you're not able to at that moment, it's easy to be like, you know what, I'm gonna just leave this environment and go somewhere where I can be good. And I think you have to take a personal look in the mirror and say, you know, I don't have it yet, but I will get there. You know, and I just tell men, you know, hey, you might not have been great, but that kid doesn't know it. I mean, that kid is gonna love you as long as you put a good effort forward. I mean, those kids are gonna love you, but you have to be willing to be bad first so that you can be great later. And that's what I just try to do with my son, honestly, is I'm gonna make mistakes. There's times where I'm short with him, but he knows no matter what, through discipline, I'm gonna always come back behind him and say how much I love him and what I've seen behind him, what I've seen him grow in, and I'm gonna always praise his progress. Even though his progress may not be on the same timeline as my expectations, I'm still going to always, you know, praise his progress.
Wow, that's good right there, because I expected my children at, you know, 3 years old, 4 years old to be able to say some things that 3-year-olds and 4-year-olds may not can wrap their heads around. And like Stephanie was saying, she said, we just want the best for our kids, you know.
Well, I mean, parenting has become competitive.
Yeah.
I mean, people will be like, oh, well, my kid was potty trained at 9 months. Like, that's great for your child. But my child will figure it out when they want to. And there were times when people swore that Milo was supposed to know things. And I was like, you know what? I trust that he'll get it when he's ready. And I can already see the wheels turning. So there's no need for me to get mad at him because my expectations and his timeline are adding up. Like, let him get there, and I'm just going to support you in the process.
And that's good. Stephanie was saying, I'm sorry, y'all, my contacts are kind of blurred. Being the disciplinary parent sometimes brings about family conflict. When they're older and have kids of their own, is when I can really read y'all, but it's like my contacts. Yeah. When they then have a greater appreciation for their parents that only wanted to raise them to be the best. And that is true, because like I tell people, you know, when my son, he would go to his father's every other weekend. The weekends he was with me, I had a house full of boys. Parents would drop their kids off on Friday and pick them up on Sunday. Like, you know, let's just take them over to Mutt's. And I was cool with that because I knew where they were. And I knew, you know, that they were safe. I knew that they were fed. They get back there and compete on that video games. And then we got a basketball goal. Oh my gosh, that was even more fun, because being a parent who loves sports, I just really enjoy, you know, seeing the children get along. And I just believe like hatred is taught, racism is taught, getting along. You can have disagreements. You know, we used to fight and be friends the next day. Now you just got to walk away from a situation, because you can't beat somebody up and they walk away from it. No, because the embarrassment in their minds, the enemy is like, go back and shoot them, go back and stab them. I mean, we saw the two kids got shot in Bellevue Park, um,
Over conflict.
over conflict, because maybe we're not teaching our children how to handle conflict, you know. And thanks everybody for checking in. Thank you for tuning in. How do you handle, like when Milo has a friend over, he's with parents day out. How do you handle conflict with a 4-year-old?
Uh,
What works for you?
Honestly, my biggest thing for him is just teaching him that he is adequate in handling his situations. Um, I try not to jump in. I know it's times he'll come home and say, a kid pushed him or things of that nature. And my biggest thing is like, okay, I know you got pushed, but how do you feel? Do you feel like this is a situation to where you are overpowered? Is this something to where you feel like that you can handle it? And I'll talk to him and I'll say, hey, do you feel like they're picking on you? Do you feel like you can stand up to this person? He'll be like, yeah, I'm good. I handle myself. If someone puts their hands on me, I know how to defend myself. And that's the number one thing. Like, I don't ever want to get to the point of me having to always solve his battles, but I do want him to know he's always got backup. So putting him in a situation to where he can understand, like, I have the ability to stand on my own, communicate what it is I need to communicate, and then if it gets too much for me to handle, I know I can call dad. So that's just the number one.
And I think that's what most children want. They want to be able to know that, dad, mom, they have my back, even any situation. And my children, they know. We had a situation when my son was in the 3rd grade, and this teacher was like, I know, and I know some parents might not, but I know when my children lie. I know when they were little growing up, I knew when they lied. So this particular teacher said, well, John said da 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 da. And I said, well, tell me how he said it. She said, well, this is how he said it. Da 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 da. And I called him. I said, hold on. I put him on the phone, put him on speaker. I said, son, tell me how you told this teacher this, particular thing. He said, no, mom, that's not how I said it. This is how I said it. I said, I believe you. And I told her, I said, you're lying. I said, now I know when my children lying, but my son was telling the truth right there. And I said, so, this is squashed. And so one thing I always told my children, don't ever send me to war without my gun loaded. If you're wrong, then you're gonna get a whooping when you get home. But if you're right, we're getting ready to go to battle. Because even at 56 years old, if I'm right, I'm going to stand toe to toe with you, because my rights are my rights, and we have a right to be right. And so as a father, I'm so glad that my son, growing up had a father, even though he wasn't in the home, and he wasn't perfect, just like I wasn't perfect. His father was active in his life. I mean, we had one discussion where he bought my son a car. It's like, no, my son does not need a car. He won't keep his room clean. Why are you going to give him a car? And he was like, a young boy needs a car in his senior year in high school. I was like, I had never heard of such, but but that's when I let his dad be dad, because I was like, women, I know we try, but we cannot teach a man how to be a man. Let's stop what the world has told us we can do. We can teach them how to be gentlemen. We can teach them how to be kind. We can teach them how to serve a woman. But there are some parts of our bodies that we don't have, that men have, and we don't understand why it acts the way it acts. And so that's when a man needs to, be involved in a male's life. It's so important. And on the flip side of that, a man needs to be involved in the female's life, a little girl's life, for the simple fact to teach her how a man should treat her, to teach her a man's love, just different things. That's why it's so important for fathers. And that's why, we're talking about that this whole month. This whole month is about fathers, and just to, highlight them, because I think a lot of times, and you may think this too, son, fathers, might get a tie or socks or something at Father's Day. But then mothers, we go all out. But we need to celebrate our men just like we celebrate our women. Even though the mothers knew the child 9 months in advance, growing in her body, I think a lot of times, fathers, some fathers, not all, but some fathers just do not get the recognition that they need, to say, hey, we appreciate you. You are grateful, and we don't need to wait till Father's Day in June. We need to celebrate our men all year, just like we need to celebrate our women, celebrate our children. Just celebrate. You know what I'm saying? Just live a life of celebration. Live a life of good. Just helping out. So another, excuse me, another thing I wanted to ask my son: what were your thoughts like when you first found out you were going to be a father?
Honestly, I was not scared at all.
Okay.
I mean, I worked with kids at the age of 9. Well, honestly, from 13 all the way until, so I had always worked with kids. I mean, the whole time that I was in that process, I was just kind of preparing myself. Uh, but the second I found out, I was like, all right, it's time now. Because I used to think about it even when I was a teenager. Like, I would always think about like what my family would look like when I got older, the type of father I wanted to be. And honestly, it just came from how much I worked with kids and just seeing at a very early age uh, what some kids didn't have access to, as far as like a male role model in their life, or just someone to talk to them, or someone to listen, or just simply encourage them. So all those years, I mean, it was just me building up. I mean, a lot of people in my life, honestly, had told me like, you're ready to be a father. You're already pretty much a father now to all these kids that you work with. And I was just waiting for the day to have my own. So I really wasn't too nervous. I think the most nerve-wracking thing was just telling her dad. But other than that, I mean, I wasn't phased at all.
And what's so funny about it, he is his father made over. Uh Jonathan's son is little Jonathan. But I mean, it's just it's a beautiful thing to see when a father interacts with his children, because there is a difference. It's a difference than the way the mother does, especially with sons. I'm gonna tell you, with sons, like I said before, people used to say you whip him all the time. I was like, but I see so many single mothers trying to raise these boys on their own. And I had to put my foot, like old folks, I had to put my foot on his neck, because I was like, I don't want him to be an abuser. I don't want him out here, having children all over the country. I just didn't want that for my son. I wanted him to be upright, to be a good human. You know what I'm saying? And to do what's right. We still making mistakes. We are still a work in progress. And so when I look at him and how he interacts with his son, how he, make sure he eats healthy. Now, when he comes to Enisi house, and even his son will be like, Enisi, I was like, well, go ask your dad. No, because he's gonna say no, but I'm gonna ask you. And that, I mean, it's a beautiful thing. But I want fathers to understand how important your role is, how so important your role is in your child's life. Stephanie was saying, thank y'all. Fuzzy, I see you say true. BJ, true. I know we try, y'all. We try. Women, we do try, but we can't raise a man to be a man, because that's not how God set us up. One of the best things we can attribute to our child's upbringing is building him up with great self-esteem. Now, that's one thing I didn't play about with my children. They knew who they were. I told them that don't come to me with no peer pressure. You are the leader. You are the leader. You set the atmosphere. It enables them to handle life's challenges and obstacles in a positive way, and especially our sons, because they are faced with many things that may discourage them in being the head of the house. I know, because so many times we've been told as women, you're a strong woman, you can do this, this, and this. And then I'm guilty of it, because I was single so long with Jonathan. I mean, he was 13 Well, 12 when I got married, and then 13 when I had my second child. But it was just like, it was just me and him. And so, he'd take out the trash. He would get mad because I was like, let's go mow this lawn. We had to cut grass. We had to do everything. So when a man entered in, I was that type of woman. I asked you once, I'm trying to let you, but if you don't do it, I'm gonna go handle it, because I tell people all the time, the worst thing a man can do is make a woman a single mother, because once we become single, you're just so used to doing it by yourself, and then you're taught, you're a strong woman, get your own job, get your own house, you don't need no man for nothing, da 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 da. But you really do, and we gotta break the stigma. We gotta break the generational curses that are being sent down from generation to generation. There's nothing wrong with teaching a young lady how to be strong, how to stand upright, and all this, but don't degrade a man because he may not be strong in the areas you're strong in, and he may be strong in the areas you're weak in. So that's what a marriage or a relationship should be, is where you're weak, I'm strong, where you're strong, I'm weak. Now, we both can't be weak. Like I said, I can let a man lead, but the thing about it is, if I see you going in a ditch, I'm not gonna go in that ditch with you. Somebody got to stand up on the road and wait for help. But as men, they are beautiful, and when they're down, don't keep kicking them. We tend to, get up and do something. Let's go. Mom and I were just looking at acrimony because mom hadn't seen it, and so she was like, "Oh my God, she let them sisters talk her out of this." He turned out to be a good man, but because, like John was saying earlier, if you don't have patience and grace, you know, for somebody or even for yourself, you won't make it. And so
And I'll say too, you kind of have to watch what you digest. I think in this day and age, it is very easy to digest other people's trauma and
mm,
tend to try to relate it to yours.
mm,
But you have to realize that everybody's situation is very different. The same people that are over here saying that they can't stand whoever their partner is or whatever, and they go through their things. It's easy to want to empathize with someone, but you can't get to the point to where it's like you empathize so much to where you take on their pain and their trauma to where now you looking at your situation and your person and you like, you know what, you deal with so and so said, so you got to be just like. And it's like, no, like, yo, everybody is not the same, everybody's situation is not the same.
mm,
And I think, I mean, to the comment that you made about if you see a man headed toward a ditch, I think the hardest part and I know just as a man, one thing that I have to hold myself accountable for is that when you do start to head toward that ditch, like, you do have to examine yourself and really be responsible for getting yourself out of that. And I think the hardest part for women is having to be patient during that process and be understanding that this man is having to go through his own journey to figure out how to be a better version of who he is, because at the end of the day, he wants to be the best version he can be for you. But sometimes he's trying to find the answers, and sometimes we're not always prepared, because I feel like women get more time to be taught and be grown into their role, or be just kind of like, I don't know what the word I'm looking for is, but just to be kind of
prepared,
guided into
but
being a woman.
yeah.
Like, you have more time to learn how to be a woman than a man has time to learn how to be a man, because
Mm,
ours honestly starts so much earlier. So it's like
mm,
we're being sent out there with puzzle pieces that may not even go on the same board, and
mm,
we're trying to figure out which ones we need, which ones we don't. But then for a woman, it's more so like they kind of lay out the pieces, and it's like, okay, now you just have to figure out how to put them in place.
mm,
So a lot of times it's that frustrating process of trying to figure out, like, is he gonna get it or is he not? Honestly, the best thing you can do is just keep giving encouragement.
mm,
Just keep letting him know that he is capable and he can figure out the answers. Uh, Now, when he stops, becoming resourceful and trying to figure it out, you got to make your own decisions. But I think just being understanding during that time of, like, he's in his cave. Uh, what he's doing in that cave is trying to figure out how to come out of this in a better situation, and he may be taking a while, and you may need to encourage a sense of urgency for sure.
mm,
uh but it's definitely something to where you have to, you kind of have to understand and realize that men and their mental health is something that is new, something that we are just now coming into, to where it's okay to explore your options. It's okay to go to therapy. It's okay to speak. It's okay to communicate. And a lot of us come from a generation of where that was not okay.
Mm.
So I mean, we're really, I mean, honestly, we're all trying to figure it out. But men are definitely coming into a new space now. So
Good. BJ says, I don't have sons, so my wife and I have to prepare our daughters how to notice the right attributes to choose a good man by the example I give. And
absolutely.
that is so important. Thank you, Mary. She says, speak, nephew. And then BJ said, a bad or lack of father figure is harmful to all kids.
It
That's
is.
it. And you're right, Fuzzy. It's okay to express yourself. And I think sometimes even as adults, because somebody expresses themselves, we got a new friend in here. Because somebody expresses themselves, uh, it's just, you might want to move them on the other side. There you go. So and it is, but you got to give people, even children, even adults, time to express themselves. And just because you don't agree doesn't mean they're wrong,
Mhm.
and so
But fatherhood provides infrastructure. I
mm,
mean, at the end of the day, I have to I have to understand that no matter what my financial situation, no matter what my mental health situation, no matter what, I still have to maintain the infrastructure.
mm,
Uh, and that's really just the role of a man. I mean, to set those guidelines, to set those expectations, understanding for a woman, what to accept, what not to accept. For a man, how to vocalize yourself, how to lead, how to get to a point to where, which I will say, being raised by a single mother, it was definitely something to where me seeing the things that you went through, it created a spot in my heart to where it's like I don't ever want to see a woman have to go through these things, or a sense of urgency to always ease your discomfort.
mm.
Um, Instead of just allowing you to go through it because it's like you feel like, well, it's my job to make sure she feels better, or I want to do something to help her, or I want to do something. So you can tend to grow up and think, I'm gonna run and always, if she has a need or she has an issue, I'm gonna run and try to solve it as fast as I can. When sometimes your job is to let the people of the family go through what they need to go through, but you just maintain infrastructure, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And if you maintain a good enough infrastructure, they will figure it out, they will learn from it, and then they'll be able to, find their way back to home. And in that process, nothing has changed for them. They still have that same support that they need.
That's good. And thank you. Mary said anybody can be a daddy, but it takes a real man to be a father. And people don't understand that. Uh I think I look at it reverse. I think, and this is just me, I don't disagree with you, Mary. I'm just saying it takes a lot. Anybody can be a father because you can father a child, but that daddy is like a connection. It's like, for me, it's just like I can call you daddy because, even with God, my heavenly father, be like, hey daddy, and go on. Uncle Donnie said, hi Milo. But Gary, thank you for stopping by. But yes, you know, anybody can go out here and drop some sperm off. Anybody can do that. We see it every
I'm still
day.
watching the show.
But it takes,
Watching the show.
a special connection. It takes a special infrastructure. I like that. It takes a special maturity level to be, a father, daddy, whichever way you want to say it. It does. It's more than that. It's more than that. And the men, their roles in the life, you see a lot of women running churches. You see the women, pastors. You see the women on the usher board. You might have one deacon, and now you got deaconesses, and you got women running church. Why? Because men are out of position. And when men are out of position, let me tell you something. Show me a man that can pray, and I can show you a infrastructure that is being built on, that is flourishing, that is going on. That family it's not perfect, but that family is flourishing because they have a praying man in the home. I'm gonna tell you, to single women out there, that is sexy. If you see a man praying and he got his own worship. I mean, for me, I know some people it might not matter to, but I just think that it's very important when the man is the head of the house and he is running things. You know, like John said, John will be 33 on June 19th. My baby's a Juneteenth baby, and and so I just thank God for him in his son's life. Nobody could ever take my son's place in his son's life. It's just that bond is that strong. And I just think that most men that should be that should be, you know, your goal. And women too, your goal. Nobody can take the mother's place. Nobody can take the father's place, and so we have to look at that. And that is so true, y'all. uh if men were in position, and we know we've got uh men who are choosing men, women who are choosing women. If that's your choice, I'm not knocking it. That's between you and God. We all got to stand before him one day. But I'm just saying, when men get together and they feed off each other. We just started the men's ministry back up at church, and I tell you, the men enjoyed it because he's giving y'all the finger. The men enjoyed it because they could come and be men. They could open up. Let a man open up. How do you feel when women won't let you talk, won't let you? I know I did it as a mother. Sometimes I just didn't let you express yourself because as a child growing up, we couldn't tell how we were feeling. We couldn't say what we wanted to. It was our parents' way, do it our way, or you're not going to do it. But we couldn't express ourselves. So how do you feel now that you have a son and you said, you have that balance? But how did you feel as a child when you couldn't express yourself?
Honestly, as a child, I didn't understand. I didn't understand it until I got older and got in situations and didn't understand how to express myself. I didn't know that it was a lacking thing. I mean, you understand from a kid's point, my parents telling me this. So me as a kid, like I said, I just didn't understand it. I didn't know that I would need to open up later. But being an adult looking back, I will say it just I think it does a lot of I think it does a lot for a child's confidence to be able to say what it is they need to say and express what it is and have like actual dialogue and conversation. um, because I mean, when we get older, having those difficult conversations can be rough. It's not that men don't want to communicate. It's sometimes they're trying to figure out how to. They're trying to figure out how to
How to
say
not pull the trigger.
exactly
How to hit
like
those
honestly
trigger
like
points.
how to talk. And it's like sometimes when it comes to especially conversating with women, I feel like men have to do a lot of mental gymnastics and saying things in a way to where it can be received uh, and actually be beneficial to a conversation. And a lot of people do not know how to do that simply because when talking to a young boy, it's not always with the kindness of tone or just the type of respect that they're gonna require later on. So it's like if I allow my mother to yell at me, clearly, I mean, she loves me. So if I go out here and another woman is yelling at me, then that must mean that she loves me. When really you've just kind of gotten attached to a certain communication style that may not be healthy for you.
Yes.
So I think that's where a lot of things kind of get lost in translation. It's not that men don't want to. It's just the type of communication we receive it a lot harsher and we receive it a lot more direct. And then that's just how we go about it. And then if you don't examine yourself, you turn into that type of father, you turn into that type of partner to where everything that you say has to be yelled or it has to be said with an aggressive tone instead of realizing that just the fact that you know how to communicate and open your mouth is enough. But like I said, I just think it's due to that upbringing. I think we tend to struggle a little bit, especially when it comes to how can I say something nice to you when it has not always been said nice to me. So what does that example look like? What does healthy communication look like? Because to me, healthy communication my entire life was do as I say and not as I do, or it's just it's very much however the person wants to give it to you, you know.
Yeah. And that is true. BJ said, thank you so much, Jared. Women also have to assist in changing the narrative. Some have to let go of their poor decisions, choose a good man for the right reasons. How can you be a queen if there has never been a king? Thank y'all for the great topic. And like I said, we're gonna celebrate men all month. So if you want to be on the Upper Mutt show, just let me know. But yeah, I mean, like he was saying, if you think about abusiveness, domestic violence, if you seen your parents fight and then you think that behavior, some people take that into their adulthood. So if he's hitting on me, he loves me, and like he said, because I yelled at my son a lot. It wasn't, if God could give me a chance to repeat it, well, he did. He gave me my grandson. So I handle my grandson different. Sit down, put it out in front of daddy's face. I handle my grandson different than my son. And it's just like, I can just, raise my voice or give him a stern look and he understands. But but my son, like he said, my communication was yelling. Come on, what is going on? And I mean, he probably did that in relationships. If you yelling at me, then you love me, because maybe he thought that was my love language. And but it wasn't. I'm sure a lot of people need to hear that. It is, and I'm gonna tell y'all something. My son is kind of like his son. He was wise because he was raised by an older generation. He had a grandmother and an auntie, and he had my mom. And I mean, he was a latchkey kid at 5, but he had some wisdom. So when a lot of people used to see my son, they'd be like, he's way beyond his years, because he had a lot of wisdom put into him. And so but I'm just saying, thank you, son, for coming on and being transparent, because I mean, you may have to start your own podcast for men. I mean, I don't know, I'm just saying stuff, but the studio is here. But I mean, because men need avenue to be men. They don't want to hear, the Bible is so unique, because in the Bible it tells you a man would rather sleep on a rooftop than hear a woman fussing or something like that. And don't quote me on it, go find it for yourself. But a nagging woman is like a dripping faucet. Y'all know how you used to have to leave your water dripping in the wintertime, and it was like you could hear that in your sleep, drip drip. So if we out here nagging our men, they rather sleep on the rooftop. I mean, it's just, we have to do better, women. You know what I'm saying? There's room for improvement in us as well. And so as a young man coming up, we weren't, I don't know, it was just like, she said, you're a great speaker. Thank you, Fuzzy. Thank you, Gary. But I mean, it's just, I really do admire my son a lot. And I mean, my son, he was my strength. I mean, he saved me from a lot. I'm telling you, God knew, having a baby at 23, I needed to slow down some. And I said some. I didn't slow. I'd be like, Mama, what you doing this weekend? You got, you want, and now I call his auntie, you want John for the weekend? But just, I just thank God that he can reason through some things. There are some guys out here, y'all, that can't reason. It's going to be their way or no way. They don't understand how to attend to a woman, just like there are women who don't understand how to attend to a man. We just think the worst lie they tell you is a happy wife, happy life. No, it should be happy spouse, happy house, because both people deserve to be happy. And so if you go into a relationship, and like John would say, he sometimes walk on eggshells with me. Like, I don't know if I should say this to my mom. It's going to trigger her. It's going to, she going to go off. She going to snap. Even today, my daughter will be 20 and a situation happened. And I was like, why didn't you call me? She said, this is the reason I didn't call you, because your voice just went up. I was like, yeah, but I don't play about my children. I don't bother nobody's children. I don't want nobody bothering mine. And so It is. I mean, we just have to be careful how we react to our children messing up, to our children falling short. You know, we have to
It starts
be
early.
careful. It does start early.
Like I think that's the part that we miss, is that for men, that process of being able to communicate starts very early. If I can't come to my mom whenever I've got something going on and tell her, and her reaction is, if her reaction is a 100 and I'm a kid, my whole life when it comes to interacting with you, I'm trying to figure out how to keep you from getting to 100 every time I do something. So then when I get in a relationship, most people's response is, okay, if someone does something to you, you go to 100. So then once again, it puts you right back in that same mind frame of, well, I'm trying not to, it's not that I want to, I'm not trying to avoid the conflict. I'm not trying to avoid the situation, but this is something that is not new. This is not something new in my life. Like, I was used to getting yelled at as a kid. I was used to being treated this certain type of way. So when I grow up doing things that trigger that mindset, a lot of men are literally walking around in a phase of just being in real life, but also remembering childhood things. And it's like, when you're trying to process the emotions for both of those, a lot of men haven't processed their childhood. A lot of them haven't forgiven the fact that, you know, their mom wasn't trying to be hard on them. It was just the fact that she may have had to do it by herself, or she didn't know any other communication ways. So then same thing happens when the man grows up. He hasn't learned any other way except for when I do something, it's going to be sent to me aggressive, directly, and that's how I have to take it. So how do I, like I said, how do I say that to you in a way to where now I have to be soft with you, but I've never experienced softness of my own when it comes to certain situations. So then you just, you know, you meet men who try to avoid situations or try to avoid conflict, or to them it's just like, I'd rather just be like, I'm okay, or I'd rather not talk about it, or I'll just put my hard hat on and go to work and try to fix the problem. But talking about the problem, figuring out why it's a issue for me, figuring out why it's triggering, you know, things of that nature. We haven't done that work in the past, and now we're slowly coming into a generation of trying to heal those processes and work on those things. So it's just, you know, we have a lot of unlearning to do, a lot of habits that we have to let go of, specifically in our community. I think we've kind of praised things as that's just what Black people do, and it's like, I mean, for a while, yes, but I mean, we can definitely change. We can definitely learn new habits. When it comes to my son, you know, spanking is not always the number one thing I want to go to. If I've communicated myself effectively, and I see that you're truly just making a decision to not do what I'm asking, then, you know, I'm not going to spare the rod. But I do have to work on my communication skills first before I just resort to, you know, physical means. Because I mean, that's the easy way out, honestly. If I can just whoop you and make you do what I want you to do, I haven't really taught you anything. I haven't really I haven't put skills into you to learn, you know, how to do what it is I need you to do.
That's good right there. Cheryl says, CN said, mental health is holding things in, not knowing how to release it. Yep. And that is so true. You don't know how, if you haven't been taught. You know what I'm saying? You know, you have to be taught how to ride a bicycle. You have to be taught how to color inside the lines. You know, you have to be taught how to make your nouns and verbs go together, you know. And I think you know, I didn't have time to teach, because I was making sure we had a roof over our heads. I was making sure we were getting the football practice. I was making sure, but I didn't make sure, because I didn't know anything about mental health. I didn't make sure that, you know, you were good and that you would be good in relationships. You know what I'm saying? Because, you know, what my son saw, he saw what, 2 divorces. You know, I didn't really bring a lot of guys around, but it was just like, you know, he saw some things that my daughter didn't see, you know, and I thank God, because, you know, she is she's kind of an introvert, you know, and he's kind of an extrovert. John, you know, he'll go get in the middle of, you know, the hay and roll with you. But it's just, you have to know how to treat each child. each child doesn't learn the same, each child doesn't process the same. So if you have multiple children, you have to meet them where they are. And I just thank God that, my son is a great father. He really is. And he's working, in other areas, just like we all are. We are working. If you say you have arrived, you have lied. Okay, because nobody has it all together. Let's just keep that 100. But we are still working. And if you're working towards getting better, if you're with somebody, there's a time limit that they have, there's a time limit you have. And so I look at, I tell people at 56 years old, if I meet a guy and he said, well, I want to be a rapper, and you 56 years old, what, like saran wrap, aluminum foil, what we rapping? But I mean, it's just, it is, y'all. It is. We have to reach out to our men. If you see a man struggling with anything, how can we help? How can we assist? And you're right, Fuzzy. It's a working process. It is. We are all a working process. So y'all know there's no drawing this week. I did the drawing from 2 weeks ago, last Sunday. So be sure to shake the show. Thank you, son. Thank you. Thank you for coming on. Thank you for being my best son. Yeah, he's my son. Look, I told him the other day, I said, your daddy was in my belly. But look, he's a comedian, y'all. But yes, thank y'all for shiking the show. Thank y'all for stopping by. And like I said, all month, even on Father's Day, we're gonna have a show. I really want to get a bunch of fathers together on Father's Day, but I know that you probably be out celebrating and doing whatever. But I want to talk to thank you, Quanta. I want to talk, to men, because also, especially those men who didn't have their fathers and their father was, 20 minutes down the road, the next state over. Maybe they were in Georgia, maybe they were in Kentucky, but it was driving distance, and you have to process that anger. You have to, because sometimes you look at, Jimmy John over there, he got his mom and daddy, and it seems like everything is going well. But what may appear to be good may not always be good. And so I just thank God that I gave my son some nuggets to work on, and things that he saw in me that he didn't want to be like. And it's okay. Thank you so much, Donna. Be sure to shake it. Thank y'all so much for tuning in, and we will be back next week talking to another great guy, guys, or however. But son, thank you so much for taking out of your schedule. He has to go to work. And so he said, I'll be on the show. And he did just that. And I just thank him, because one thing about my son, if I call him, he's going to show up. And, some people can't say that about their sons. But I know about mine. If he don't show up, he got to hear it from mama. But thank y'all so much. Tell the people bye, Milo.
Say bye.
Bye. Thank y'all so much. I love you. Love y'all. Look at it. See y'all next Sunday at tell them 5 o'clock.
5 o'clock.
Look at